Shalom Lechem, Erev Tov. We're continuing in the Rambam's Mishnah Torah Laws of War. I wanted to do something different this week, but I think that I can do something different this week because, well, one, because I can, but number two, because even though the things I want to share today, I shared some of them over Shabbat, and many of you were not here over Shabbat, so I am going to be able to share them, and nobody will even know. But the reason I'm telling you that is because when things that I teach, they stay with me, it tells me that they have to stay. They have to come out. They should be recorded. And though I wish it was Rabbi Yonatan Halev's class that I was recording again now, it's not. My Friday night derasha, together with my Shabbat day derasha, both of them were crucial into understanding not just what the Rambam is teaching us, but also things that are relevant to the world that we're living in right now. As with your permission, I wanted to start there. And so I'll start. Who was here Friday night? You were here Friday night for my derasha also? Oh, now I have tough competition. And Baruch was also here. Everybody else had COVID. I don't know what's going on around here. It's always different, right? I saw a post on social media that I printed out for Shabbat because I couldn't bring my social media with me to the Beit Knesset on Shabbat. And in there was a story. And the story, this is the Facebook post, and the story says the following. Look what kind of generation we are raising here in the Jewish people. We're a mishpacha from a kibbutz in the north. Baruch told me he stayed there before. And they received the message, this family, when? Bashmini Asiri, on October 8th, so a day after the war began. That it would be best for us to leave our home in the north of Israel until the situation calms down a little bit. Now, as you know, on October 7th, the war began not just from Gaza, but all of a sudden everyone started dancing all around us. And so those who were living in the north became vulnerable to attacks from the north. And for those of you who are around now, that's exactly where Israel's next frontier is, unfortunately. I mean, maybe frontier, great, but where the new front of the war, it's not what we hope for. As anachnu tikatan, so we took a little bag. Visharnu tabayit k'moshu, we just locked the door and left the house as it was. So they packed a few things, they got out of town. Achar kach higiu milimnikim lakibutz. After a while, the reserve soldiers, so in Israel you have regular soldiers and they have reserve soldiers. In October 7th, they drafted 350,000 reserve soldiers. So over 250,000 people that went from being civilians to going back to the military. So this unit of reserve soldiers, they came to the kibbutz, and they stayed in the kibbutz, in the field, living in a tent, like they would be camping out in the middle of a desert. They were in the kibbutz, but they were living outside. Bishlav mesuyam, at a certain point, patachnu tabayit shelanu lechayalim she'guru bo. We opened up the doors of our house and said, listen, we're not there. It would be better if the soldiers lived in our house. So imagine this. Imagine that you have now evacuated where you live, your house right now. And they tell you there's a war. You're not going to come home for the next, who knows how long, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half. Do you want to leave the keys with some random group of soldiers you've never met before so they can live in your house, sleep in your beds, use your bathroom, shower, electricity, food, drinks, kitchen? And they said, sure. Better they should live in the house. We're not there. Somebody should use it. And we gave them everything that they want, they could use in the house. That's not a Hebrew word. They, maybe because they were polite, maybe because they were shy, they used the bare minimum of things in our house that they possibly could use. After a few months, 3 months, and a number of different units that came through our house, the army decided there's no more use for our house, and the soldiers left our house. Hayom, this was from Erev Shabbat. today. היינו בבית לקחת כמה דברים. We went back to our house, not to live, just to gather a few more things that we need from the house. ומצאנו את הפתק בתמונה, and we found this note, which was in the picture, along with a coin of 10 shkalim. And the note says the following. לקחנו פסטה אחת. We took one pasta. Now, the grammar here is not. Yeah. They took one package of pasta. And the package is worth 7 shekels and 90 aguro. That's like around $2. Ber. Toda rabba, thank you very much. Shirion, Sevet Amit. It was a tank unit. And they left on the note a 10 shekel coin. Now here's what she writes. I think it's a she. Can't tell it. מדובר בצוות טנק של סדירים, כן? That this particular unit was a regular tank unit. ילדים בגיל של הבן שלי. They were kids, the age of my son. 18, 19, 20, 21. שהיה לא נעים לקחת חבילת פסטה בזמן שהם מסכנים את החיים שלהם כדי לשמור לי על הבית. And it was uncomfortable for them to take one package of pasta, even though they were the ones putting their life on the line to protect my house. אז יש לי שני דברים להגיד על זה. I want to say two things about it. קודם כל, first off, כבר הבנו שמדובר בדור של גיבורים בסדר גודל תנ"כי. You can now recognize that we're talking about heroes that are of the biblical proportions. אבל פה, הם הראו שיש להם גם מידות מוסר, וזה איכשהו עוד יותר ריגש אותי. But we already knew that they were heroes. But the fact that they're also ethical heroes, such good people, that made me even more emotional. חוץ מזה, and aside from that, it must be a man because it's in the masculine, אני חייב להם, I owe them 2 shekels and 10 agorot. That's like 50 cents. אז אם מישהו מהצוות רואה את זה, so if somebody from the unit sees my post, ואתם באזור קיבוץ ופנויים, צרו איתי קשר. And if you're near the kibbutz, please contact me. רוצה להחזיר לכם עודף, I want to give you back your change of 2 shekels and 10 agorot. וגם איזו ארוחה מפנקת וחיבוק של תודה מכל הלב. I want to also give you guys a nice meal, not just pasta, and maybe a big hug from all of us. And when I saw this note of a unit of soldiers, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, I don't know who they are. I don't know what kind of soldiers they are. I don't know if they know halakha or don't know halakha. I don't know what the story is about the note. But the first thing, Mi ka'amcha k'Yisrael. Who is like the Jewish people? Soldiers come to your house. They're allowed to be in your house. You give them permission. They take pasta and they want to pay you back. It made me emotional also. But then, because that's what happens in my head, as I was coming to the Beit HaKnesset on Friday night, I'm thinking to myself, could they have taken the pasta without permission? And if they could take the pasta without permission, do they have to pay back for the pasta? What does Halakha say about taking pasta from people's kitchens in the middle of a war? And all of these thoughts are going through my head. And I figured, let's learn those halachot together. What are the halachot of taking pasta from people's kitchens during war? And I can't tell you there's a chapter on taking pasta from people's kitchens, but there's a chapter on what does it mean when the Jewish people go to war, and what are the rights of the Jewish people when the Jewish leadership chooses to go to war. So if you'll open up the same Rambam that we've been studying, even the same not the same chapter, but the same section. So you want to open up the Rambam. If you're in Sefaria, you want to go to the book of Shoftim, the Laws of Kings. We're not in the Tanakh yet, so in the Rambam. Laws of Kings, chapter 4. It's not in there. No. Yeah. Yeah, because that's where we are now. Back. Maybe before we do this chapter of Rambam, though, let's read some Tanakh together, no? It's always a good place to start. So if you open up your Nevi'im into the book of Shemuel. Now Shemuel in the Nevi'im has a split personality because the Christians split him into two. We have Shemuel Aleph, Samuel 1, and Shemuel Bet, Samuel 2. But Shemuel didn't know he was two people. Why did we adopt the numbering system of the Christians? Yeah, when they come to argue with us, now we don't argue with Christians usually, but when they tell us, listen, if you don't argue with us, we're going to throw all the Jews out of Spain. We're going to kill all the Jews in this city. Then you better start arguing. And when they say, what does it say in Samuel 2? And we, what is Samuel 2? You guys don't even know your own book. And then we find ourselves homeless in the next place. So we adopted their numbers, seemingly, so we could at least know what they're talking about. Which book of the Mikah has chapters that we made? Tehillim. Very good over there. Tehillim. We number Tehillim. Yeah. But we number them also, seems like. There are even some chapters of Tehillim that other sects in Judaism might have, but are not in our Tehillim. Not the Yemenite one, the maybe the Samaritans or the Qumran sect. Don't hold me to it right now. Over there, but see, that's such a good point. Do you mind? There are 2 AA batteries in the drawer because if everything's going to go wrong in one class, it's going to happen now. My microphone is on the... So if you look with me on Shema, I'll tell you how to find it. If you want to open up a Sefaria, you go to Tanakh. You want to click on Nevi'im, on Prophets. Look for Shemuel 1. You found it over there? Okay. Shemuel 1. And open to chapter 8. 1 second, I'll give you these to throw away. Chapter 8. Who is Shemuel? Who is he to the Jewish people?
The prophet. No, not Shemuel. The prophet. No king yet at this point.
There's no king yet. Shemuel is a leader of the Jewish people in the transition between the Shofitim, the judges, who led the Jewish people, and the Melachim, the kings who are going to come lead the Jewish people. Shemuel is a prophet who is holding up the fort in this period of transition. And Shemuel seems to have done a great job, at least for the first 7 chapters. And listen what happened in chapter 8. Vayhi kasher zaken Shemuel. And it happened that when Shemuel became old, Vayasem et banav shofetim l'Israel. And he placed his sons as judges over the Jewish people. Vayhi Shem beno bechol Yoel v'Shem bishnehu Aviyah. He had a son named Yoel and a son named Aviyah. Aviyah, I think today in Israel might even be a girl's name, but in the Mikah we find it as a boy's name. Shofetim bever Shava. They were Shofetim in Be'er Sheva. V'lo halchu vanav bidrachav, and his children did not walk in his ways. Vayitu acharei habatza, and they decided to go after money. Vayikchu shochad, and they took bribes. Vayatu mishpat, and they perverted judgment, justice, because of their love for money. Here you find 2 fascinating things. One, you find that the number one thing that perverts people is money. People will do anything for money. The worse of a person you are, the more you love money. There's a direct correlation between people's love of money and how good or bad of people they are. It could be that other religions don't agree with us. Other religions love money. But in our Torah, our leaders who take and take and take, we don't view them in a positive light. Doesn't matter what you know to be true today. What is Torah? And therefore the children of Shemuel, they said, listen, we could judge the people. Take a pretty penny from it too. Why not? I told you this once. There's a teaching among our Chachamim. It says, Oy ledor, woe to a generation, shemanhigav, whose leaders are nashim, are women. Woe to a generation whose leaders are women. And what does that do right away to everybody? What do you mean? By the way, are there no good female leaders in the Jewish people? Dvorah, Neviah, who else? Sarai Menu. Okay, you're talking about our mothers. Devorah is a political leader also. Really, she leads us the war. What are the world? Do you know women who run governments, countries that are good people? That's what I mean. Do you know men that are bad? Yeah. But why woe to the generation whose women are leaders? This teaching of our Chachamim is a halachic teaching or an agadic teaching? Agadic teaching. It's a teaching of Agadah. When you study Agadah, you have to study Agadah carefully. And when you quote Agadot, you have to quote Agadot carefully. There are people who teach Agadah, you hear them in Derashot and Shabbat tables, they say crazy things. In the Agadah, there are crazy things that are written there. Most of which we try to understand, and some of which we just don't know what to do with. Our Geonim say if there are parts of the Agadah, let's just leave it alone. We're not bound to listen to everything written in the Agadah. That's not me saying, that's the Geonim said. So what does it mean, woe to a generation whose leaders are women? Our Chachamim and the Agadah always speak in code. You know a little bit of... Forgive me, I'm going to take you to the realm of Kabbalah. The Mukubalim talk about this. So, what is a man versus a woman in rabbinic literature? How do we refer to a man? What is he? In the relationship between a man and a woman, what is he? Think of biology. A man is a giver. Yes, and a woman is a receiver. It's not only in Judaism this is the case, but this is part of the way that men and women are. A man gives, a woman receives. Kabbalat Shabbat is a feminine, it's a reception of Shabbat, receiving something. Yeah, this is very important. So when our Chachamim tell us, woe to a generation, some people, woe to a generation whose leaders are women, now say it the way that our Chachamim say. Woe to a generation whose leaders are takers. Takers. I want to be president. I want to be the prime minister. I want to be the king because I want to be A, B, C. I want to get X, Y, Z. I want to be famous. I want to get money. I want to have power. If that's your leader, oilado, woe to a generation. How special is a generation where the leadership comes to give to the people and not take from the people? That's what our Chachamim are saying. Why do they say it like that? Because it's Agadah. Because nothing that Chachamim tell us, they want to tell you straight out. They want to work a little bit. It's why in the world, we also have the sun is the giver and the moon is the receiver. It's why in the prophet he says that one day the light of the moon will become like the light of the sun. That one day that imbalance that exists between male and female will one day come to a place where things change. We view that as a positive progression in the world. And so here, you see there's a new leadership, but unlike Shemuel Hanavi, who's giving to the people, along come his sons, and what do? They take from the people. And whenever you have bad leadership, the people go into crisis mode. People at a certain point get sick and tired of bad leadership. Sometimes, when people are sick and tired of bad leadership, they make bad choices. They'd rather have someone crazy lead them than someone sane, because all the sane people till now have only hurt us and oppressed us and perverted life for us. So we'll take the craziest option you have only because it's not what we've had until now. So look what the Jewish people do. All of the elders of the Jewish people, elders mean their Chachamim. And they come to Shemuel. They tell him, you have become old. And your children have not walked in your ways. By the way, what does it matter that he's old? Who cares that he's old? Okay, what else?
They will not have that unifying force anymore. Their sons.
Okay, so one part of this is the sons are not doing Rev. What does it have to do with him being old? even if he was young. At a certain point, a person's age precludes them from being a leader. In our Sanhedrin, members step down because they've reached an age where they're no longer able to make certain decisions. You cannot lead if you don't have the strength, physical strength, mental strength. It's not a bad thing, by the way. It's not a bad thing. People have to know when their time has come to also step down. I was reading letters this week of George Washington. George Washington, listen, it's going to be hard. Any personality you look at in history, from today's perspective, you're always going to find something you don't like about them. It's not the way that you're supposed to read anything. Especially, it's not a Torah. George Washington's an American president. And it's a great thing. America. Is he really American, George Washington? Because at that point, everybody came from somewhere else. George Washington was fighting for what he would hope to be this republic that was the United States of America. One of his generals was an Irish general. You know, George Washington was the first president who set that precedent of stepping down after 2 terms. He didn't have to. Where else in the world do people stop serving the people when they're doing a great job? Even if they're doing a horrible job, they don't stop. But he stepped down because he believed wholeheartedly that that was a value that he had to instill into this country. One of his generals, I don't remember his name right now, he was an Irishman. And he wrote a letter to George Washington. And he told him that really, I'm not sure if this whole idea of a democratic government is going to work. Where do you see it anywhere else in the world? Rather, what we need is, in his words, a benevolent monarch. We need a good king, not like the bad kings we had. We need a good king. Maybe we'll have some democracy among the states, among the different provinces, but we want you to be our king. And George Washington wrote back a scathing letter. Do you think that I fought this hard so that I could become a king? So we could go back to the problems we had before? We're trying to do something completely different. And you think to yourself, whereas George Washington may have been an incredible leader, one of his greatest teachable moments as a leader was when he chose not to lead. When he said, my time has come to step back and let someone else take over from me. That's also very important. You find this in Moshe Rabbenu. Moshe Rabbenu, at a certain point in time, has to make a decision. Has to accept the fact he's not going to finish the job. There has to be a transition of leadership. In America, we use this word, a peaceful transition of leadership. Peaceful is the bare bones minimum that you need in a transition of leadership. What is a peaceful transition? It has to be more than peaceful. Moshe Rabbeinu is the most supportive person. Yehoshua is going to be me. He will lead you. He will guide you. He will fight for you. Trust him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be with him. That's not just peaceful. Moshe Rabbeinu recognizes that just like he led until today, from today he's going to lead by stepping down. It's a very hard thing. Anyone who's ever had a position of power in their life knows how hard it is to step away. Think of this. Many of you have children that have grown up. One of the hardest parts of being a parent is to recognize that as children get older, they're not under our thumb anymore. You can't tell them things you used to tell them 20 years ago. You can't force them to do things. You could try to convince them. They might scream at you, hang up the phone, slam the door. But that transition of being a parent to an older person who's no longer a child, some parents fail that test miserably. They don't know how to stop suffocating. But some children fail the test too. I'm not blaming just the parents. But here I'm talking from a leadership perspective. It's a wise person who knows I'm still a parent, but I'm not a parent of a child anymore. I'm a parent of an adult. Maybe an adult who's married, maybe an adult who has children. That's not the same thing. Yes? So we have this transition happening here. They're afraid, 1, you're getting too old to lead us. 2, the children that you have are not leading us the same way that you have. Give us a king who will judge us like all of the nations of the world. וירע הדבר בעיני שמואל כאשר אמרו תנה לנו מלך לשופטנו. It was very bad in the eyes of Shemuel that they asked for a king. ויתפלל שמואל לאדוני, and Shemuel decides to have a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he genuinely doesn't know what to do. Now, what bothers Shemuel so much that they want a king? In the Torah, there's a mitzvah to have a king. What bothers Shemuel so much? They don't say we want a king because we want to fulfill a mitzvah. We want a king because we want a leader according to the Torah. They say we want a king like all the other nations in the world. Whenever Jews try to do what all the other cool kids are doing, they always do it worse. Always. Look at the mess of a democracy that Israel attempts to be. It's a mess. Look at everything we try to imitate. It's embarrassing sometimes. You see some Jews walking the street. Come on, what are you... It's like I was at SeaWorld once. I saw these Hasidim, long coats, big peot, and baseball caps. New York Yankees. Of course, nobody knows you're Jewish. Now you have a baseball cap. You're like, he's in disguise. The world knows that you are Jewish. Stop trying to be like everybody else. Nobody likes you more when you're like them. You have to be you. They'll be them. You be you. They wanted to be a king like everybody else. Vayomer Adonai el Shemuel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers Shemuel. Shema b'kol ha'am. Listen to the people. L'chol Hashem u'elecha. Everything they tell you. Ki lo otcha ma'asu. Ki oti ma'asu mimloch alehem. He said, it's not you that they don't want. It's me that they don't want. What's HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying? It's not about you. It's about me. They're choosing to have a king that will replace me, not replace Shemuel. You're always going to be Shemuel. The Jewish people don't want God anymore. Yeah.
I see a parallel story about wanting a king like the other nations. Similar to like people who want a religious leader.
Sure. I'm sure there's a tendency to want a pope or a tendency to want all kinds of other things like that. That's not new. It's not new that people get jealous of each other. And it's not new that Jewish people want to do what all the other cool kids are doing. I say this every time I do a wedding. Since when in Jewish history do rabbis officiate weddings? Why? What am I doing? When I go under the chuppah, I take a glass of wine. And what's the bracha that I say? Do you know the bracha that I say? Well, do you know what that bracha is called? I say Baruch Piyah. Fine. What's the bracha, the next bracha that I say? No? אשר אסר לנו את הארוסות. אשר ציוונו על האריון, אסר את הארוסות. התיר לנו את הנשות לנו על ידי חופה וקידושין. He forbade us to the people we're not allowed to be with. He forbade us from those that we are betrothed to. He permitted us to marry those people that we will marry, and Baruch Hashem Mekadesh, that you are who sanctifies the Jewish people al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin, through chuppah v'kiddushin. That bracha is called in Hebrew what? You know, Berkat Chatanim. It's the bracha of the Chatan. It's the blessing the groom is supposed to say when he marries his wife. He's supposed to take a glass of wine. He's supposed to say this blessing. He's supposed to take a ring and put it on his wife's finger. He's supposed to give her a ketubah and then walk out the door and take her home. Why on earth am I saying the bracha for the groom? He should say, no, I'm marrying his wife. But they even say in English, they say, he's marrying them. Is that how they say? They don't say I'm officiating the wedding. I always correct them. Say I'm officiating. I'm not marrying anybody. He's marrying this couple. Oh, he married us. I didn't marry you. I married my wife. It's very important. I don't know why they say it like that in English. For me, it always makes me feel uncomfortable. Well, I know it's English. It just still makes me uncomfortable. What does it mean he married us? Why do I do that? There are two reasons. Oh, but yeah, try to give me one. That's the first answer. We wanted to be like all the nations. Everybody else, when they get married, they always have a nice priest with or they have some imam marries them. They have some clerk with a robe in the courtroom. I mean, when I went to go get married in the San Diego courthouse, a county building, when I went to get married, the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Give me $35. Why did I need you to say, now pronounce you. Who cares? You make me married? This is a very non-Jewish concept. That somebody else shows up in your relationship and pronounces you husband and wife. Yes? So what do you have here? The Jews say, listen, I go to my Catholic friend's wedding, he got a priest. I go to my Muslim friend's wedding, why come my rabbi doesn't do my wedding? Number two, Jews became stupid. They don't know how to read Hebrew anymore. They don't know how to say brachot anymore. They don't know how to write a ketubah anymore. What do you mean that's stupid? I call everybody here stupid? When I come to do a wedding, and I have a chatan who went to Jewish school for 25, I'm not talking about somebody who yesterday started learning Torah, or 2 years ago. Somebody who will been in Hebrew school 25 years of his life. And I give him a pen. Can you sign your name in Hebrew? He doesn't know how to do it. Your parents spent my brother just signed up his kids for school, $37,000 a year per child. So that you can't write your name in your own ketubah, that I have to write it for you? So now we have to hire rabbis. Because the rabbi knows what kind of ring, the rabbi knows what kind of ketubah, the rabbi knows how to read Hebrew, the rabbi knows when to put the talit, and all of a sudden, now there's a third guy in my bedroom. I am getting married, and the rabbi is right there saying the bracha that I'm supposed to say. When I got married, I asked Harav Peretz if I could say the bracha. He told me, of course you say the bracha. But if you do it over here, these Hasidim are going to stone you to death. He said, so here's what you're going to do. I'll say bracha slowly, and you listen to every word, I'm saying it for you. That's why I tell the Khatanim. I always say, I'm saying the bracha for you. Sometimes the rabbi says the bracha, the Khatan and Kala are busy talking to each other. He's saying the bracha for you, genius. At least listen. But that's where we're at. We do a lot of things because that's what all the other cool kids are doing. And it's very embarrassing that that's the way that we do things. We so much want to be like everybody else that comes in everywhere. A wedding is a classic case. You see it all the time. There is no business of a rabbi being in the chuppah. But now we do it. In fact, now they say that we can't do it. We can't stop it. Why do they say we can't stop it? Thank you, Owen. If we do it, then it's what we've been doing for so long, and then the other people are going to feel bad because only some of us know how to do our own weddings, and other ones don't. And that's already something new. Yeah. So he continues. ככל המעשים אשר עשו מיום העלותי אותם ממצרים ועד היום הזה, ויעזבוני ויעבדו אלוהים אחרים, כי הם העושים גם לך. He said, just like all the things the Jews have done against me, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, since they left Egypt, what are the things they did to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Not in order, just go.
Every story of the Shoftim is rebelling against.
Okay, forget the Shoftim, go back to Egypt. Let's start from the beginning. If I said not out of order, then Owen said Shoftim, then I said order. Okay. Think of the Torah. Golden calf? Yeah, the quail in the desert, the slave, the spies, complaining that Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to kill us, splitting of the sea. Go literally like from there until where we are right now in Shemuel. The whole book of Shoftim, rebelling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shemuel, don't worry. The Jews are just being their normal self. They're just being bad. ואתה שמע בקולם, listen to them, אך כי העד תעיד בהם, והגעת להם משפט המלך, אשר ימלוך עליהם. But do me a favor. Make sure that when you tell the Jews, I will give you a king, make sure you warn them exactly what does it mean to have a king. Your kid wants to do something very bad. Listen, I can't hold you back anymore. Let me just tell you why you shouldn't do what you're about to do. And then you tell them all of the reasons they should not do what they're about to do. And then what do they do at the end of your speech? They do it anyways. Exactly this is what's going to happen with Shemuel and the Jewish people. Shemuel tells this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything he tells them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it's a bad idea to get a king. You sure you want it? Yes. And here is what he says. This will be the law of having a king. He will rule over you. He will take your sons. He will take your sons to serve him in his chariot. They'll be running in front of him. Why do people run in front of the king? And even now in England, I was in England. Before the king comes out, they scream, the king is coming. Why? It's his honor. It's his honor, like in Esther, Megat Esther, remember? Haman has to take Mordechai and he has to announce out loud, this is what's going to be done to the person who the king loves. That's his whole job. His whole job is to make the person feel important. That's what will happen to your children. Nobody does that for Shemuel. Nobody does that for the Shoftim. ולשום לו שרי אלפים ושרי 50 ולחרוש חרישו ולקצור קצירו ולעשות כלי מלחמתו וכלי רכבו. He's going to take your children to become officers for him, to build his weapons, to build his chariots, to plow his fields. ואת בנותיכם ייקח, he's also going to take your daughters. לרקחות ולטבחות ולעופות. He's going to take your daughters to work in his kitchen, to bake his bread, to cook his food, to be his wife. But why are they cooking and cleaning for him? He has a lot of wives. So they all have to be busy with something. So some of them are with him, some of them are cooking food, some of them are baking bread, some of them cleaning the floor. That's what he's going to do to your children. ואת שדותיכם ואת כרמיכם וזיתיכם הטובים ייקח. And your fields and your vineyards and your olive trees, he will take your good ones. ונתן לעבדיו, and he will give them to his servants. וזרעיכם וכרמיכם יאסור ונתן לסריסיו ולעבדיו, and he will take מעשר, he's going to take taxes from you and give them to his people. ואת עבדיכם ושפחותיכם ואת בחוריכם הטובים ואת חמוריכם ייקח. ועשה למלאכתו, and he will seize your slaves and your donkeys, and he will take them for himself. צונכם יאסור ואתם תהיו לו לעבדים, he will take your cattle, your livestock, and you will be for him slaves. וזעקתם ביום ההוא מלפני מלככם אשר בחרתם לכם, and you will cry out on that day because of your king that you chose yourself. ולא יענה אדוני אתכם ביום ההוא, and God will not answer you on that day. Why? Why won't HaKadosh Baruch Hu answer you when you're suffering from your king? Because you chose him. You chose him. What do you complain to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of your bad choices? Shlomo HaMelech says, Ivelet Adam tesalef darko, ve'al Adonai yiz'af libo. People make bad choices and they get mad at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can't make bad choices and get mad at him. You can't say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did this person die so young? He only smoked 17 packets of cigarettes a day. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's fault that this person smokes. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why did this father die so young? He only went 130 on the freeway on the way to Los Angeles. What do you mean? Mazal, he lived until today. Everything bad is HaKadosh. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you chose this. Don't come looking for me when it gets bad for you. You ever said that as a parent? Of course. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the same thing to us. וימאנו העם לשמוע בקול שמואל. And the nation decided not to listen to Shemuel. ויאמרו, they tell them, לא כי מלך יהיה עלינו. No, we want a king over us. והיינו גם אנחנו ככל הגויים. Again they repeat it. We want to be like all of the nations of the world. ושפטנו מלכנו ויצא לפנינו ונלחם את מלחמותינו. We want our king to judge us. He should go out before us. He should wage war with us. וישמע שמואל את כל דברי העם וידברם באוזני אדוני. And Shemuel hears all of these words of the people and he takes them back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ויאמר אדוני שמואל, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Shemuel, שמעה בקולם. So what are you going to do? You have to listen to the people. והמלכת להם מלך, and you should crown a king for them. ויאמר שמואל לאנשי ישראל, לכו איש לעירו. And Shemuel told the people, go back to the cities you came from. It's done. You got what you wanted. You're going to have a king. The rest is literally history. Pretty much the rest of the Nevi'im are all the horrible kings the Jewish people had. We don't have good kings. We have some horrible kings. Can you mention to me some of the good kings we have? Chizkiyahu HaMelech alav shalom. David HaMelech alav shalom. Shlomo HaMelech alav shalom. Yoshia, okay, Yoshia. Should we start making a list of all the bad kings we have? Because that list won't end. It won't end. All because the Jewish people made a choice that we want to be like everybody else. Instead of HaKadosh Baruch Hu leading us through a prophet, through a judge, through a leader, we want like everybody else. That's what we want. And so you get what you ask for. And here teaches you something else, by the way. I hear this idea in the Jewish community. There's a word in Yiddish. I don't speak Yiddish, but I know the word. It's called bashert. Rabbanit, what does it actually mean, bashert? Literally, I don't know the literal translation. It's like a predestined, you belong with somebody else. This was how it was supposed to happen. It's some kind of interesting version of hashgacha pratit, of divine providence. So people think, listen, if you make bad choices, and that's what God wanted to happen. But that's not what the Torah tells us. The Torah tells us you make bad choices, bad things will happen to you. You make good choices, good things will happen to you. But what about it? Where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the story? Leave HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of the story. Stop blaming everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Can you marry the wrong person? Yes? So then not everything is Basher. So then we were meant to be with each other. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, you made bad choices. She must be crazy if she's marrying you. You must be nuts if you're going to go take her to the chuppah. Everybody around you has a bad idea. You do it anyways. You know how many phone calls about divorce I got this week? And it's only Tuesday night? It's a normal thing. So people know that they can marry the wrong person. So why are you so convinced that because you met her when you were walking to the street, saw her hair and the sun? Why is that you convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that must have been what he wanted from me? Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to put on sunglasses and go, that's what he wanted from you. Maybe you are good at making bad choices. And all of the bad things that happen in the world, we keep saying, that must be what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. You see here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can try to stop you from doing things that aren't good for you. But if you push hard enough, you'll get what you want. That's why all of our tefillah, we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please answer our prayers for the good. What do you mean answer prayers for the good? Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't answer my prayers. Please, don't answer if I'm praying for something that's not good for me, don't answer me. Ignore me. Sometimes you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I prayed for something and I didn't get it. Maybe because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows it's not good for you. We always think, he's gone, he's not listening. Maybe he's trying to help you out. If you push hard enough, though, you can do it. You can definitely push hard enough and marry the wrong person. You can push hard enough and buy the wrong house. You can push hard enough and do the wrong things in your life and the wrong things in your career. All kinds of things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't stand in your way. And this is exactly what the Jewish people do now. They force HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do something for them that is not good for them. And that's a very scary thought. Because what that does is put a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. And most religious people, of all religions, most religious people try to use God as an excuse to shirk away from any responsibility. See, you don't believe in God, so you have all. I live in peace. Everything is, thank you Hashem. Everything is good. Baruch Hashem. No, that's not how the world works. That's maybe how HaKadosh Baruch Hu works in preschool. But once you stop wearing diapers, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to look very different. Then you realize, oh my gosh, not only is there HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I'm part of his executive decision-making committee. He's expecting me to make the right decisions for the world. I'll give you an example. We had a Talmid Chacham here a few years back. Rabbi Joe. Remember Rabbi Joe Wolfson came here? He taught us a whole shiur on taking care of the environment in the Torah. Remember that? It was downstairs. It was like the end of COVID down there. I don't know, COVID over. It was down there. And he shared some terrifying sources. The Rabbanit once shared them in the class before he got here. It says in the Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the land, le'ovda, to work it, l'shomra, to protect it. And the Midrashim there's a long Midrash, I'm not going to read it to you now. The Midrash there talks about what happens if you don't protect it and you just work it. The Midrash tells us you have the power to destroy HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. There's all kinds of religious people that ignore what we are doing to the world out of some misguided religious understanding. No matter what we do here, everything is going to be okay. That almost becomes a thing. Like if you're religious, you don't care at all about what happens to the environment. I'm not telling you that your religion has to now become what happens to the environment. That's a flip side of the story. But a person has to realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me a world, and I can destroy that world. You're alive today. There are species of animals that were alive when you were born, and they don't exist anymore. And they will never come back again. This earth will never see those animals again. Why? Because we make bad choices. It's a basic core belief of our philosophy. One of the 13 principles of the Rambam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes the Reshaim, and he gives reward to the Tzaddikim. What's the basis of that belief? Is that you have a lot of power. You have the power to choose in good and bad. Not everything that happens out there is because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. It may be what HaKadosh Baruch Hu lets, but not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And that's a very sobering fact. And I think that most religious people use their religion as an excuse to not have to take care of the things in the world we have to take care of. I'm going to say, I know I said something here on Shabbat, it's Sudash Lashit. Someone got very mad at me afterwards. It's okay. Rabbenu Saadia Gaon, towards the end of the Emunot Videot, he mentions that there's two different areas of having children. There's having children, and there's raising children. There are some people in the world, and this is me saying, not Rav I'm saying, there are some people in the world that are excellent at having children. Excellent. Like they excel. This is something they do very well. But raising children failed in that department entirely. Now, listen, I wrote an article now that will be published by the Chabura in Elul, God willing, in a few months. And it's about the challenge of raising children and what happens when children grow up to not be who we wanted them to be. I'm not here to put guilt on parents. It's not the point. Children, at the end of the day, like I said earlier, they grow up and they make their own decisions, and you're not responsible for all the decisions your children make. Which decisions are you responsible for? The ones that you were responsible for. If you didn't do the right thing when they were young, and they grow up and continue not to do the right thing, then of course, that's on my shoulders. If I did everything right, and then they decide at the age of 18 or 20 or 30 or 40, do whatever they want, it's not on my shoulders. Yes, I suffer from it, but I'm not responsible for it. So much of what we see in the world are parents who stop being parents. I'm allowed to give musa. It's okay. Because I give musa to myself also. I notice sometimes, even in I travel the world a lot, go to other Kehillat, I notice it's a special generation we have. Today, I saw a group of people, and the mother of these people told them to tell my wife hello. And what did the kid do? How old was the kid? 14. What do you do with a kid who, when the mother doesn't? That's 14 years too late to deal with that problem. People tell me, I would love to come to your house for dinner, but my daughter doesn't want to come over tonight. Your daughter is in Shira's class. She's not even 6 yet. Who on earth is your daughter to say she doesn't want to come for dinner tonight? What kind of parent are you that your children are your parents? I know what I'm saying sounds old-fashioned. I'm not telling you Chas v'Shalom anything bad. I heard a speaker this week, a non-Jewish lady, last week, and she said, you can only be your children's friend when they're young or when they're old. If you are their friend when they are young, you will not want to know them when they are older. And if you want to be their friend when they are older, you better be their parent when they're young. That's your job. When you walk down the street and somebody does something to you because their parents didn't raise them right, that's the fault of those parents. Who let you come into the world and behave like that to somebody else? I also had a bad day. It doesn't mean my bad day gets to become your problem. We all have stuff we go through. But somebody told us that's not the right way to talk to somebody else. Someone said that's not the way to make money. I went to fill up gas. I was driving back from LA. And while I'm filling up gas, some guy tried to rob the grocery store, the food mart. I have to tell you, that lady who ran the food mart, she must have been 50 years old, maybe 6 times my size, not upwards. She grabbed this guy, knocked him down on the floor, beat him up with her apron, her blue food mart apron, And she held him down until the police came. And I said, look, that guy, his parents messed up really bad. But that lady, I wish I could meet her parents. Somebody did something wrong and someone did something right. Who taught you that if you don't have money, you get to go rob from the grocery store? Who taught you that? And sometimes people don't even have parents. I'm not blaming them. But we can make bad decisions. That's what it says. Avot achlu boser v'shinei banim tikena. That parents can eat unripe grapes. You ever had a grape that's not ripe? Ovadia, ever tasted a sour grape? What does it do to your mouth? That's a horrible feeling. That's a horrible. There are a few things in the world that are bad. Sour grape is one of them. Some people like tila. I found out my wife eats lemons. She said that's why she survived marrying to me. That's what's her. You ever smelled rice when it spoils? A horrible smell. There are certain that are horrible. It says in the Mikra, when the parents eat sour grapes, sometimes the children's teeth, they suffer from them. There are bad decisions that parents make that children end up suffering for. And it's not okay. It's not okay that we live a life where we think we can do whatever we want. I'm going to have 100 children, and I won't raise them, and I won't clothe them, and I won't feed them, and I won't make sure they do good at school, and I won't make sure they behave properly. I did my mitzvah of having children. What kind of crazy person says that? You have a child, but now that child has your last name, and they're walking in the street as a horrible person. If you want to finish the mitzvah, have the child, raise the child. That's your job. The people, they blame HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. No, I did my mitzvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do his. When's the last time you saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu raise a child? It doesn't work like that. I got sidetracked, which is not unusual. So back to our Rambam. Let's look at the Rambam. Rabbenu HaRambam in chapter 4 of the Laws of War tells us the following. Obadiah, because your mother raised you well, could I ask you for a refill, please? Thank you. Says Rabbenu HaRambam, all of the things that Shemuel the prophet said, Rabbenu HaRambam rules as a halakha. Reshut yesh lamelech, the king has permission. Thank you. Hashem should bless you. Liten mas al ha'am litzrachav uletzorach hamilchamot. The king can take taxes from the people, either for his own needs or for the needs of the war. Vekotzev lo meches, ve'asur lavriach min ha'meches. So you're not allowed to hide your taxes from him. You have to pay your taxes. V'yesh lo ligzor shekol mi sheignov ha'meches yilakach mamono o yihareg. And the king can make a law that anybody who steals from the government can have his money taken from him, or can even be killed. Where does it say that? Shneimar, like it says, "Vatem tiyulo la'avadim," that you will be his slaves. Essentially, when the Jewish people chose to have a king, they chose to become slaves of another human being. That means that they chose to be underneath someone else. Do you remember the story in the Torah? The story, halakha, about a slave who's supposed to go free. And he decides, what does he say? Ahavti et adoni. I love my master. So what does he do? He stays. What do we do to keep him? He's supposed to go free. He says, no, I prefer to live with my master. I like him. He has good food here. He treats me nice. I have a job. My wife is happy. The kids are going to school. The master's paying for it. I want to stay here. What does the owner have to do? He takes him to the doorway and he pierces his ear in the doorway. Yeah? It's in the Torah. And the rabbis are like, what on earth are they doing? Poor guy just wants some cookies tomorrow morning for breakfast. Why are you piercing his ear? What does the Midrash say? Midrash says, how could an ear that heard at Har Sinai that you will be my slaves, you will only answer to me, said HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How could you choose to answer to another human being? Why would you choose to live like that? If you have the option of freedom, why would you choose to be a slave to another human being who's just like you? Do you know how many people in their life walk around, maybe they're not slaves, but they walk around not realizing that freedom is so much better. It's scarier. It's scarier, but it's so much better. of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But who gets hurt there? We always think the person gets hurt from being bound to this avodah zarah. I spoke to someone this week. Who was I speaking to? Was it here in the Beit Knesset? I don't know where it was. They told me they gave up their job. They're working very part-time. They lowered their expenses drastically. They live out in the middle of nowhere. Who was just talking to me? And I said, how do you feel about it? And they said, it's the best decision I ever made in my life. I was making 6 or 7 times the amount of money before, but I was a slave. I was in the office from the morning, from the night. Even my aunt, I have an aunt. She's my father's sister. I just was with her for an hour in Muncie when I was there in New York. She's a doctor. She just retired. And I sat with her, and we spoke a little. And I said, don't you miss working? But not a day in my life do I miss working. I said, I was the doctor. She was the head of the hospital. She had her own clinic. I'm a slave to so many different systems. To the insurance system, the healthcare, the patient, they call me in the middle of the night, they wake me up. I said, now I got to go to my yoga in the morning. I got to go to my exercise there. I got to see my kids when I want to. So if I would have known, I would have retired 20 years earlier. Never was like that back then, yeah? And here is a... Here you have a reality where there are people who, it's not the money, it's the fact that they think that's what they have to do all day. They don't think that they could just step back. They don't realize if you want to be free, it's better to be poor and free than to be rich and a slave. What does it help you? If every kid's graduation you miss, and every birthday party you're not there for, and every time you're out of the house, you never see your wife, you never see your kid, what's the point of all the money that you have? You could be half as rich, quarter as rich, live a little more humbly, and be the freest person in the world. But that's what the Jewish people chose. Now, all of these halachot, I don't have to read you all of them. They're exactly what the Navi tells us. He could take your daughters, they could be his wives, he takes your sons to be a soldier, sends them to battle, makes them work in his palace, all kinds of things the king can do. But for the purpose of the 10 shekel story of the pasta, that's where we got. Look on Halacha Vav. Yeah, chapter 4, Halacha Vav. 6. Let's say the king goes to war, and he needs some food for his soldiers. And there are all kinds of people's houses along the way, people's fields along the way. In American law, there's a word for this, and I don't remember it's a phrase, a word, it's a concept. Eminent domain, thank you. ולוקח השדות והזיתים והכרמים לעבדיו כשילכו למלחמה ויפשטו על מקומות אלו. When they go to these places, they take everything they want along the way. אם אין להם מה יאכלו אלא משם. Assuming they don't have what else to eat aside from what's in that person's field. ונותן דמיהם. But he has to pay for it. So the king can take your pasta, but he has to pay you back 7 shekels and 90 agorot. The Navi didn't say that. The Rambam, that's the halakha that our rabbis reach. So can the king take your pasta in the middle of a war? Can his soldiers take your pasta in the middle of a war? Yes. Does he have to pay you back? Yes. How did this soldier know that halakha? Option number 1. Thank God we have Torah scholars in the Israeli army. This whole war that everyone's fighting right now, do yeshiva students have to go to the army or not, is based on a false premise. There are thousands of yeshiva students in the army. There's a dayan in Israel that I had to reach recently, and I couldn't reach him because he's in Gaza. A dayan from a bedin, maybe almost 50 years old. Took off his suit, jacket, tie, put on a uniform, went to war. This whole thing, you cannot be a tamicha. It's not a real concept. People very often they'll create something and they want you to live in that illusion, but you don't have to live in the illusion that other people have created for you. But then that illusion, great. A lot of people have the delusional people in the world. Now you have, maybe the soldier is just a regular 18-year-old kid, doesn't know anything about Torah, nothing about Judaism. Maybe he's a good person. Maybe his parents raised him right. Also could be. More? Our rabbis tell us, Israel, the Jewish people, Im enam nevi'im, if they are not prophets, you know the sentence? B'nei nevi'im, they're still the children of prophets. Maybe this soldier, maybe he doesn't even know who Shemuel Hanavi is. Maybe he failed that class in high school. I don't know him. I can't tell you. And if he is a Tamei Chacham, I ask forgiveness already now. But one thing is that in his blood, I don't mean his physical blood, I mean in his spiritual DNA, is the fact that he knows in his bones that if a Jewish soldier is in someone else's house and he takes pasta from the pantry, he owes them 7 shekels and 90 cents. Because that's who we're dealing with. That's who's fighting for us in Am Yisrael right now. You don't have any other soldier like that in the world, anywhere. In English, what do you say? You call it a sailor's mouth. You want to say someone has a bad mouth, you have a sailor's mouth. What? A potty mouth. Okay, even better. Look at the last halakha. Halakha Yud. So if the king can take your children and take your sons and your daughters and your property and your trees, it makes me feel like I'm quite a vulnerable person. Says Rabbenu HaRambam, look at the middle of the halakha. Uvakol, in all of the things the king does, you ma'asav l'shem shamayim. All of his actions have to be for the sake of heaven. V'tiyeh machashavto u'megamato leharim dat ha'emet. It has to be all of his focus, his thought, his purpose has to be to raise up the true faith of the Torah. Ulmalaot ha'olam tzedek, and to fill the world with righteousness. I said this halakha in New York right after October 7th. I was there in October. I came to New York to teach a shiur, and I told them this. When our soldiers fight, they're not only fighting to protect people, they're not only fighting to hold land, they're not only fighting because of a war, they're fighting as a Kiddush Hashem. Because they are ambassadors of righteousness in the world, regardless of what the world wants us to believe. V'lishbor zero'a hareshaim. They are there to break the strength of the evil people. You're living in a world where terrorists who cover their face and wear green bandanas and burn babies and rape women and murder grandparents, somehow the world is not sure if they're the bad people. That's the world you're living in right now. People are standing in public with their names, with their careers, with their microphone and saying, those people are freedom fighters. Those people are engaging in rightful resistance. That's what you're hearing every single day. And the fact that you and I live in that world should terrify you. Because the whole perversion of the world is when people don't know how to tell the difference between tov and ra, between evil and righteousness. The prophet says, woe to the generation where people will call evil good and good evil, and they will call darkness light and light darkness. How can you not tell? The guy holding somebody's head up, you're not sure if he's a bad person? Doesn't in your head enter that thought? At the end of the day, every war that Am Yisrael fights is a war of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The reason that we wanted a king in the first place was to judge us. The king, we want him to go to war for us. We want him to judge us. At the end of the day, even a war between the Jewish people and her enemies is a war of righteousness. It's a war of good overcoming evil. And when I saw this note, I was moved even on a higher level. That the prophet's children are still in the battlefield. That Am Yisrael, that people think are going to disappear one day, is never going to... Am Yisrael's high, for real. For real, something very real. Who is alive? All the people that say that we are colonizers, that we don't belong. We are literally the descendants of the people who fought the wars with David, who fought the wars with Chizkiyahu, who fought the wars with our prophets marching us into battle with our Kohanim. That's who we are. We haven't lost yet. We don't plan to start now. And so long as that's the generation, so long as that's the type of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, he's not burning down buildings, wearing a kafia on his face. He's wearing a uniform, again, David, protecting our families, leaving behind 10 shekel notes. I think all of us owe 2 shekels and 10 cents to the Jewish people. I think all of us owe those Chayalim something. We owe them our existence. We owe them our lives. We owe them our dignity. The fact that I could sit here in the year 2023, it was then 2023, and know that someone is going to hurt the Jews, and I'm not just going to have to be quiet about it, but that there's going to be someone who can take revenge, someone who can avenge the blood of Jewish people that was spilled. I live in the luckiest generation in the world, because that wasn't the case 80 years ago. That's not even the case today. I was in Los Angeles last night. What do you do when in Pico Robertson they beat up Jews in the street? What's the Jewish response? A news article. That's the response. In Israel, heroes in green uniforms and black uniforms and blue uniforms and cream uniforms, all kinds of uniforms. They stand up and say, Jewish blood is not cheap. And that's a generation that I would live in all over again and over again and over again. And so I only finished half of the shiur I wanted today, so B'ezrat Hashem, I'll see you next week on Tuesday night. God willing. Thank you for learning with me.